Gentleman Puppy and the Biggest Lollipop of all time. Gentleman Puppy woke up this morning and, for a strange reason, felt massive happiness right from the get-go. It took him a couple of seconds to realize the reason why he woke up so happy. Thought about it, and then of course realized that today was the day of the big fair. The biggest fair that they had in the city that would come only once a year. He had agreed to meet his friends a little bit later that day, and they would all together go to the fair. The fair had a big surprise this year. They advertised with it quite big, yet it was still a surprise, for nobody had guessed what it was. And so Gentleman Puppy, of course, always being the inquisitive mind and person that he was more intrigued than ever. And so while he was eating his breakfast, he was impatient, and when he did his workout, he was impatient, and when he walked to the location where he met his friends, he was impatient. Yet after waiting for a little while and finally meeting his friends, delivering hugs and compliments and stories, they all as a group walked together to the big fair. There was one thing that stood out, for the fair usually looked the same every year, with the big central tent and the small stands surrounding around it, ever further moving in circular paths. Yet this year there was a strange, roundish building, almost standing just a little bit off to the main tent. And of course, Gentleman Puppy was the first to guess that yes, maybe the surprise was in there. And so while they bought their entrance tickets and they all went inside, Gentleman Puppy led the way, and using his spatial orientation, of course, immediately went for the biggest tent. It took them a while, and in the meantime, Gentleman Puppy saw the normal stands that he was familiar with. The popcorn stand, the hot dogs, the games, the fishing games, the shooting games. Yet none of those interested him right now, for there was one mystery that he wanted to solve by the end of today. And so he purposely walked towards the big, slightly round tent and found himself in a long queue. He should have guessed they didn't go in the morning, and so now the fair was filled, and there was a long line for the mysterious building. They stood in line for a little while until finally they met the first fair employee, and they asked him, "What is in the tent, and how long will we have to wait?" And the fair employee simply smiled at them and said, "I don't know what's inside, you'll have to see. And for how long this line might last, I have no idea, for it depends on the wonders that people will find inside and how long they will need to process the glory and the wonder of what they will find." And with that cryptic answer, he refused to be goaded in saying anything else. And after a while, the friends of Gentleman Puppy stopped asking, simply chatted amongst themselves. And after they stood in line for more than an hour, Gentleman Puppy's friends got slightly annoyed. Some were suggesting that maybe instead of waiting in line, they should enjoy the fair, for if this wait was to go on for a little bit longer, or ever longer still, they would probably only see this attraction and nothing else. And so Gentleman Puppy said, to a slight irritation, but still holding his composure, he said, "If you guys want to go, then please go, but I am addicted to mysteries, and I need to know what is in that tent. We have gone to the grounds here every single year. I know the stands, I know the people behind the stands. I know how to shoot and how to get the biggest fluffy bear while fishing. I know how the popcorn tastes and how you shouldn't get a sugary spin, and especially not when the big lady is behind you. I know all of these things, yet this tent is the only thing I do not know, and I need to know." And so his friends, knowing Gentleman Puppy, knew that if he set his mind to something, Boop would not be swayed. They left him to stand in line and have their fun in the fair. And Gentleman Puppy did not mind. He knew his friends did not mean bad, but they knew he had not had the inquisitive mind and the addiction to mysteries that he had. And so he felt happy and content that his friends were having a jolly good time, and for him, he enjoyed his time trying to figure out from clues that are left to figure out what might be inside the big, slightly round tent. And so he looked around and he saw tracks, spores, smell, sounds everywhere. When he smelled deeply, he smelled something very sweet. Yet, of course, he was at a fairground, so sweetness was everywhere, heavy in the air. He couldn't hear anything special from the tent, so he thought it was probably not an animal or a man or a machine, so that would have to be a piece of art, an exhibition of some sort or something like that. Fortunately, the people that left the tent left from the opposite side, so he could not see them to gauge their opinions and their impressions, their states of mind. So he looked at the size of the tent and thought to himself that the tent would easily be 15 by 10, quite massive for a simple art exhibition, so he clearly had no idea. He thought maybe a balloon for the roundness, but who would ever build a balloon inside of a big tent on a fairground? And so he went through many, many ideas, yet never landing at one that satisfied his clues. His ideas, never one of them seemed plausible in the slightest. And so when the line slowly got ever closer, he almost couldn't stand anticipation and seriously considered skipping the line. Yet, of course, having stood in line for that long and being a gentleman of the upper class, skipping a queue was simply not done, nor your forte. So Gentleman Puppy gently tried to wait, trying to control his nervous wiggling of his tail. And then, after waiting for a little bit more and the darkness had set in, he finally was the second last person in line. He had hoped to quickly check around and see around the corner, but they only left one person in, and there was a small cross-section that didn't allow you to look in. So when the person in front of him was let in, he could almost burst with anticipation. He almost couldn't stand it anymore, and when they made him wait for longer and longer. And then the worst news happened all that day. The tent door closed and the person walked out. "Sorry people, the fair is closing down. We will not be accepting any more visitors." And Gentleman Puppy raged inside, disappointment and rage at not being let in, yet he waited for so long. He missed the entire fair for this. And so he pleaded with the man to let him in as the last person, yet the people behind him of course complained as well. And so after a while they stopped complaining, realizing they were definitely not getting in, and so many people left quite grumpy, Gentleman Puppy included. And he met his friends and they talked about how Gentleman Puppy was not allowed, and his friends felt sad for him, knowing that Gentleman Puppy did not deal well with being denied a good mystery. And so they tried to cheer him up, despite the fact that they had quite a jolly good time. The Gentleman Puppy was not to be lightened up. And while they slowly walked towards the exit of the fair, one of his friends said, "Well, you can still sneak in." And of course, Gentleman Puppy's first response was, "No, I can't do that." Yet his friends continuously tried to cheer him up. And so one of his friends had the good idea of maybe him sneaking up into the tent while they drew a diversion. And Gentleman Puppy's first idea, of course, was to say no, yet his curiosity got the better of him, and realizing that he was not doing anything per se illegal, he was merely gonna take a quick peek. He agreed, thanked his friends, and slowly, using the stealth that only a Gentleman Puppy can have, walked to the 10 by 15 big slightly round tent, walked to one of the sides and saw that he could move the flap up and probably get inside that way, waited for the cue of his friends. He didn't have to wait long until he heard shouts and cries of anger and joy and loud banging sounds, and the carnival people quickly ran to that. The Gentleman Puppy waited a little bit longer until a person finally came out of the tent and ran to the noise. Gentleman Puppy quickly lifted the cover and sneaked inside, and he was in. And so he walked around in the dark, feeling his way, using his smell and hearing. But the tent and the inside was dark. He couldn't see anything. He could only see a slight shimmer, some shadows and the like. And so he looked for lamps to illuminate whatever he could see. And when he walked slightly more into the middle of the tent, he saw the shadow silhouetting a massive, big, round object, and he had no idea what it could be. And so he stumbled around a little bit more, and a little bit more still, until he finally found a lamp and followed the cord of it and found the light switch and waited before he turned on the light, and he could see the big round object inside the tent. He was bursting with anticipation, thrilled with the danger of him being there, having stealthed inside. Yet he could not hold his anticipation any longer, and so he used his paws and he hit the switch. And it took a second or two. He could hear the lamp slowly turning on, and boom. The lights flashed on everywhere, blinding Gentleman Puppy. He could not see anything. He was quite shocked. He hid himself in a low crouch behind a cabinet, his reflexes getting the better of him, yet gaining control of his reflex, and the lamps slowly not blinding him anymore. He looked over the box that he hid behind, and he finally could see the big round object. And he was shocked, for it was the strangest round big object he had ever seen in his life. It looked kind of white, yet not completely. It had little dots everywhere of different colors, and the surface was not completely smooth, and he was confused, for he did not know what it was. Yet it looked so alluring, just the size of it. The big round ball must have easily been 10 by 10 meters. It was massive. And he walked ever closer, and there was a excruciating sweet smell permeating the air. And he still did not know what it was, and so he walked ever closer, and he dared to touch the ball, and it felt soft but still slightly rough. And when he touched it and he saw and he smelled, he realized what it was. And so he put out his tongue, moved it ever closer, and gave the big round ball a lick. He recoiled back because of the sweetness that hit his tongue and the slight sourness tinge. And he looked at the big, mysterious round ball and realized that it was a massive, massive lollipop jawbreaker. And he was amazed and laughed out loud at the mystery being this mysterious ball being a massive lollipop jawbreaker. And so, for the fun of it, he took another lick and laughed ever more until he heard a sound screaming, "Who is there?" And Gentleman Puppy realized that he was not supposed to be there, and so he quickly ran out the tent, walked underneath the flap, and quickly ran out, enjoying the cool evening breeze and laughing, running gingerly and stealthily, as you can walk and run while laughing your ass off. He ran over the fair's grounds and met his friends at the exit, and they saw his grin and asked him, "What did you see?" And he said, "I just saw a mysterious ball." And he refused to tell them anything more until they told him what they had done, and realizing there was no talking Gentleman Puppy out of everything, they told him how they had made a diversion by singing very loudly, dancing all over, dancing on the stage ground, dancing around the tent, dancing around the people that wanted to leave, and pulling them into dances and forcing them so nobody could actually leave the fairgrounds. And of course, fairground people tried to get rid of them, yet then they pulled them into a dance, and so they kept on going and going until they were slightly more forcefully removed, while they kept dancing to still keep the attention of the grounds for as long as possible to give Gentleman Puppy time. And so Gentleman Puppy got an even bigger fit of laughter, and he completely broke down. And after laughing for what it seemed to lasted for hours, he finally regained his composure and told his friends what he had seen, that he had taken 2 licks of the biggest lollipop ever on this planet. And his friends, of course, didn't believe him, yet he did not change his story, and so at some point they finally realized he was talking the truth. And so they saw the fun of it as well, and they were still giddy from their distraction and dancing with everything and everyone. And so they all laughed together and merrily walked home and had an experience that they would never forget for their life. And every now and then one of them would see a big lollipop or a big jawbreaker and would break out in a big, big smiley grin. And so, Gentleman Puppy and the story of the mysterious lollipop, the biggest lollipop in the world, was done. And for now, my dear listeners, I wish you a very sweet night.